The $1 billion blind spot. Why we fund everyone except the women leading the revolution. Welcome to Soft Girl Era, the sacred space where strong black women unlearn survival, rediscover softness, and reclaim the joy, rest, and freedom they deserve. I'm your host, LeAnne Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French. And I'm your guide from burnout to boundaries, from doing to being, from strong to soft, and loving every second of it. Today, I want to share something with you that stopped me in my tracks, something that challenged everything I thought I knew about entrepreneurship, about opportunity, about who gets to build wealth in this country. I recently had the privilege of sitting down with Julia Bishop, a visionary advocate and researcher who is reshaping the conversation around Black women entrepreneurs. Julia's work is not just important, it's revolutionary. They are exposing the invisible barriers that keep brilliant, innovative Black women from accessing the capital, the networks, and the support they need to thrive. They are forcing institutions to confront their complicity, demanding policy change, and creating pathways where none existed before. Julia Bishop is making the world better by telling the truth that too many people refuse to hear. And what they shared with me, what they revealed through data and lived experience, is something every single one of us needs to hear. Here's the truth that Julia laid out for me. And it's a truth that should shake us all awake. Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in North America. Let that sink in. The fastest growing. Black women are launching businesses at rates that outpace nearly every other demographic. They are innovators. They are risk takers. They are visionaries. They are building tech platforms, launching product lines, creating solutions to problems that have been ignored for generations. And yet, despite this explosive growth, despite this undeniable momentum, Black women founders receive less than 1% of venture capital funding in Canada. Less than 1%. In the United States, the numbers are similarly devastating. We are talking about a demographic that is driving economic growth, that is creating jobs, that is reshaping industries, and they are being systematically starved of the resources they need to succeed. Now, when we hear statistics about women in business, we often hear about the gender gap. We hear about how women owned businesses struggle to get funding compared to men, and that's true. But here's what Julia helped me see. Here's the counterintuitive insight that changes everything. Even within women focused entrepreneurship spaces, even in programs designed to support women founders, Black women are still being left behind. The very spaces that claim to champion women and that claim to level the playing field are often replicating the same exclusions, the same biases, the same systemic barriers that exist everywhere else. This is not just a funding problem. This is an intersectionality problem. This is about how race and gender intersect to create compounding disadvantages that most people refuse to see. And Julia Bishop is forcing us to see it. Let me paint you a picture. And there's an organization in Canada called the Black Women Collective. It was born out of necessity, out of frustration, out of the lived reality that Black women entrepreneurs, especially those outside major cities like Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal, were being systematically excluded from mainstream support programs. These women showed up to networking events and found themselves invisible. They applied to accelerators and were told their ideas weren't scalable. They pitched to investors and were met with skepticism, with condescension, with questions that had nothing to do with their business plans and everything to do with who they were. So they created their own space. The Black Women Collective offers mentorship, financial literacy training, and advocacy for policy change. And the women who participate, they report increased confidence, better financial management, expanded networks.
But here's the thing, the collective shouldn't have to exist. The fact that it does, the fact that Black women had to create their own support system because the existing ones failed them, that tells you everything you need to know about who gets access and who gets left out. Julia shared with me the findings from a report that surveyed 1,500 Black women founders in Canada. 1,500 voices, 1,500 stories, and the data is staggering. 63% of these women self funded their businesses up to $100,000. 63%. They dipped into their own savings, their own pockets, their own families, because no one else would invest in them. 43% could not secure external funding at all, not because their ideas weren't good, not because their business plans weren't solid, but because the gatekeepers, the investors, the institutions didn't see them as worthy of investment. And for Black women who are mothers, the barriers multiply. Imagine trying to attend a networking event, a pitch competition, an accelerator program when you have no childcare. Imagine being excluded from opportunities simply because the people designing those opportunities never considered that you might need to bring your child with you. This is what Julia means when they talk about intersectional barriers. It's not just one thing, it's everything all at once, compounding, suffocating, relentless. And here's where it gets even more infuriating. This report didn't just document the problem, it provided solutions. It called for government backed loans. It called for virtual networking platforms. It called for child friendly accelerator programs. And slowly, incrementally, those recommendations are starting to influence policy. But it's not enough. Not yet. Not even close. Because while we're having conversations about inclusion, Black women are still funding their own dreams with money they don't have. While we're designing programs, Black women are still being turned away. While we're celebrating progress, Black women are still carrying the weight of an entire economy on their backs without the resources, without the recognition, without the rest they deserve. Now let's zoom out for a moment and look at the bigger picture. The US Census Bureau released data showing that women now own over 14.2 million businesses in the United States. 14.2 million. And Black women are leading the growth rates. Leading. But revenue parity remains far off because growth without resources is just survival. And we are done surviving. Many of these women started businesses out of necessity. They faced workplace discrimination and said, I'll build my own table. They were single mothers and said, I'll create my own income. They were told no so many times that they stopped asking and started doing. This is resilience. This is brilliance. But it is also exhaustion, and it is time for the rest of the world to catch up. Julia told me about women who leveraged community networks, who turned to informal investment, who advocated for more inclusive lending practices. And they made progress, but they did it without institutional support. They did it while being underrepresented in high revenue sectors. They did it while self funding at rates that would break most people. And the question we have to ask ourselves is this: why are we making it so hard for the people who are already doing the work? Why are we forcing Black women to prove themselves over and over again when the data already shows their impact? Why are we celebrating their resilience instead of removing the barriers that require them to be resilient in the first place? This is where the conversation about soft girl era becomes so important because this podcast is about releasing the cape, about refusing to carry burdens that were never ours to carry in the first place. And Black women entrepreneurs, they have been carrying the weight of systemic exclusion, of bias, of discrimination, while building empires out of nothing. They have been told to hustle harder, to be twice as good, to prove themselves over and over again, and they have done it. but at what cost? At what cost to their health, their relationships, their joy, their peace? Julia's work is giving us permission to name the cost, to say out loud that the system is broken, to demand that the people with power, with capital, with influence do better. Because here's the thing, closing the funding gap for Black women owned businesses isn't just the right thing to do morally, it's the smart thing to do economically. When we invest in Black women entrepreneurs, we're not just investing in individual businesses, we're investing in entire communities, we're investing in economic transformation, we're investing in innovation that reflects the full diversity of human experience. We're investing in a future where opportunity is not determined by race or gender, but by vision, by innovation, by the audacity to dream. And the data backs this up. Study after study shows that diverse leadership leads to better business outcomes, that inclusive investment portfolios outperform homogeneous ones, that when we support marginalized founders, we unlock economic potential that benefits everyone. So, what does softness look like in the context of entrepreneurship? What does it mean to release the cape when you're building a business, raising a family, holding down a household, and fighting for funding all at the same time? Julia's work suggests that softness looks like community, it looks like mentorship, it looks like systems that are designed with Black women in mind from the very beginning, not as an afterthought. It looks like investors who see potential instead of risk. It looks like policies that support mothers, that support women outside major urban centers, that support the full humanity of Black women founders. It looks like a world where Black women don't have to choose between their businesses and their well being, where they don't have to sacrifice their softness to prove their strength, where they can build and rest and thrive all at once. And here's where the data becomes a call to action, because Julia Bishop is doing the work of exposing the gap. But closing the gap requires all of us. It requires investors to actively seek out Black women owned businesses. It requires mentors to show up, not just with advice, but with access. It requires community members to support, to amplify, to champion. And it requires those of us who have been taught to survive, to hustle, to carry the weight, to finally put it down and demand the support we deserve. This is not about charity. This is not about feeling good. This is about recognizing that when we exclude Black women from the resources they need to succeed, we are all losing. We are losing innovation. We are losing economic growth. We are losing the solutions to problems we haven't even named yet. Julia Bishop is changing the world by telling the truth, by naming the barriers, by demanding better. And we can change the world too. One conversation, one investment, one act of solidarity at a time. Because softness is not passivity, softness is not silence. Softness is the radical act of choosing rest, choosing boundaries, choosing joy, and then turning around and making sure that every other Black woman has the same opportunity. Softness is building systems that hold us instead of systems that break us. Softness is saying, I will not carry this alone, and I will not let you carry it alone either. So here's my challenge to you. Here's the question that Julia Bishop asked me and that I'm now asking you. How can you use your influence, whether as an investor, mentor, or community member, to actively support Black women entrepreneurs and help close the funding and opportunity gap? What is one action you can take this month? Can you seek out and champion at least one Black woman owned business in your network? Can you share their story? Can you invest your time, your resources, your platform? Can you challenge the institutions you're part of to do better, to be more inclusive, to design programs that actually serve the people who need them most? Because the truth is, we don't need more conversations about inclusion. We need action. We need investors writing checks. We need mentors opening doors. We need institutions redesigning their programs from the ground up. We need every single person in this room, every single person listening to this, to ask themselves, am I part of the problem or am I part of the solution? And if you're not sure, let me make it clear. If you have access to capital and you're not actively seeking out Black women owned businesses to invest in, you're part of the problem. If you have a platform and you're not amplifying Black women's voices, you're part of the problem. If you're designing programs for women entrepreneurs and you're not centering the needs of Black women, especially Black mothers, especially Black women outside major urban centers, you're part of the problem. But here's the good news: you can change that today, right now. You can decide that you're going to be part of the solution. You can decide that you're going to use your influence, your resources, your voice to create the change that Julia Bishop and so many others are fighting for. You can decide that you're going to stop celebrating resilience and start removing barriers. You can decide that you're going to invest in a future where Black women entrepreneurs don't just survive, they thrive without guilt, without apology, and without explanation. This is soft girl era. This is where we unlearn survival and reclaim our softness. And this is where we build a future where Black women entrepreneurs have everything they need to succeed. Not because they fought for it, not because they proved themselves, but because it was always theirs to begin with. So I'm asking you, what will you do? How will you show up? How will you use your power to close the gap? The revolution is already happening. Black women are already leading it. The only question is, will you join them?